My name is Gershon Willinger. I was born in September 1942 in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. My own parents were very, very assimilated German Jews in Germany, but still consciously Jewish. There were many Jewish names in the family, although they gave their children, such as my father, my uncle, two uncles, and my two aunts, German names. So they were very assimilated, but still with a strong Jewish identity. They were very liberal. Because why would my parents, knowing that the war was on in Holland, give their son a bris? If that happened when you lived in Europe in those days, guaranteed you were a Jewish boy. So, and I'm saying that because there must have been a Jewish consciousness about. So they were really, they had a Jewish identity. Strange that I was born in 1942, my sister in 1940, because that was the time that already things became very bad. But every family wants children. So my parents were very heroic, and they placed me with the resistance in Holland. And they took me to the home of righteous Gentiles, Chasidei Umot HaOlam, which are people, those good Christians that, despite endangering their own lives, helped Jews. I was placed with them. I must have been 3-4 months old. I stayed with them. It was the whole town working with the resistance, but unfortunately somebody betrayed me. My name was given away, and the Dutch police, who were collaborating with the Nazi regime, picked me up and brought me to a transit camp called Westerbork, which is a transit camp, a central camp, not far from where I was hidden, where they assembled when the razzias and the hunting of Jews in the big towns and cities, where they were sent to as a prelude to go to the east. In the beginning, people didn't know that, but because I came without parents and I was about 5 months old, and we have the records because the Nazi regime loved record keeping. Though I had a Brit Milah, I was still not sure, and that was quite normal in those days. Is there some Aryan blood in this child? Has this child maybe got a German soldier as a father, or the mother Jewish, and that didn't save you to postpone the execution a little bit, but they wanted to find out exactly, which is different with the children who came as a whole family with the parents, grandparents, and so forth. We came to that camp, and every Tuesday morning, the trains left from this town in Holland directly 3 day, 4 days sometimes, train ride in cattle carts to Auschwitz, to Bergen-Belsen, to Sobibor, to Ravensbrück, to all the camps out in the east. And I stayed in this camp. So from about the end of the year in 1942-43, I entered the camp, and I only left the camp on the very last train to the east with a group of 50 children. We were all between the ages of 18 months and 6 years old. We were accompanied by young women like yourself, 16, 17 years old, and maybe 20 as well, who had to look after us and came with us, Jewish women, and came with us. So we didn't go to Auschwitz. We were sent on the 30th of September 1944, all the children with a few ladies, we were sent to Bergen-Belsen. That is the camp where Anne Frank also perished. So we stayed in that camp until approximately the 28th of November 1944. We were at the liberation of the camp, and we were also segregated in a different barrack because we were to be bartered with. We were to be gambled. You give us maybe prisoners, German prisoners, I don't know what, but you give us what we want, and we'll give extra care to those children, those 50 children. We were also quarantined in a different barrack in Bergen-Belsen. But that didn't mean that it secured us our life. It meant that, again, a postponement of whatever was going to happen. We, all 50 children, got through that, but before the liberation of the camp by the British, we were then sent from Bergen-Belsen to Theresienstadt in the Czech Republic. And we came to Theresienstadt. It was a garrison, an army town, and it was different in that respect that there were buildings, there were brick buildings. The local population was being housed, the Jews moved in. And it was also a functioning camp. There was little food. There were no gas chambers at the time. They were in the process of being built. And it means that during my time, you still went daily, weekly, from the train from Theresienstadt, which is in the Czech Republic today, straight to Auschwitz. What was special about this camp, that there were orchestras, there was a theater, but if you were a soloist, for instance, and you played violin, the next day, number may have been up and you were on the train, goodbye soloist, you were going to be murdered in Auschwitz. But the whole idea of a town where people lived was there. And what happened then, so, by the way, Bergen-Belsen was liberated shortly after we left by the British. It was burned down because typhus was rampant there, because the death marchers came to Bergen-Belsen. So typhus was rampant and they had to burn everything down. That was done by Jews, because the Nazis, although they were very cruel, they still loved their classical music, they still loved their dogs. They could put a child, a cripple in the gas chamber and then pat their dog on the other side, and and were loving fathers and mothers to their children. So this was kind of a schizoid position. On the one hand, they can murder Jews, but that was a job. That was really a job that needed to be done. On the other hand, I can love my family and my dog. So I always accentuate that this whole extreme thinking. So what happened is, we were there the 8th of May, the day that the Russian army, or the Red Army, came to liberate the camp. Of course, I have no memory, but I know everything from documentation. And I went to each country, to Holland. I was in Poland. I still go very frequently to Poland. I'm a speaker on the bus. And then it took a lifetime for me to do all the research. And what I do remember is in the summer, because it was more, but I somehow remember that, in Theresienstadt, and I remember being picked up and put into an army truck, because all those 50 children, we were 50 children, survived. And then we were in an army truck. I remember night, day, to arrive back at Holland. All us children went back with different modes of transportation in a different way. Myself, and I suppose another couple of children, went in an army truck, and I really remember that. That was in the summer of 1945. And then we came to Holland, back to Holland. But when I came back from the concentration camps, I remember everything, what I did there and who I lived with. I came back full of scars, that's what I know, and they couldn't keep me quiet, because for 4 young women to look after 50 children was very difficult. When I came back to Holland in a big army truck, there were receiving centers for not only the children, but also people who came back from the camps and were displaced. And us small children were taken care of by Jewish caretakers often, who came back after the war. And we went to institutions, we went to orphanages, because many of those children, they didn't know if there was an aunt and uncle, or if there still was a family member alive. In my case, there were still 2 aunts alive, who were in Holland, but had their own problems, I think. What to do with the little children who are between the ages of 18 months and 6 years old, who cannot talk for themselves, and we don't know if the parents are still alive. So then started the little Holocaust of all those children being sent from pillar to post until somebody showed up, to orphanages, to institutions. So what happened to me is that my wartime parents, where I was taken away from, was the heroic people, and actually my wartime father went to jail because it was a crime to harbor a Jew. It was an absolute crime. It could cost you your life and the life of your family. So these are very special Christians that we should always think very highly of and always mention them in our talks. Not all of us do, but I do. So they looked for me, they found me, and I went home with them. And I remember all that. And when I went home with them, there were other children there, but I was a Jewish child. And they didn't do anything to hide it, but the Minister of Social Services thought it was not the right environment for me, although I had a very good, I started life there. I was also, from there, I went to orphanage. I went to all kind of other institutions. I finally they found an aunt who was a relative of my mother who lived in Holland, who had survived, and they sent me to her. And then finally a Jewish childless couple wanted a child. I was 8 years old by that time, in 1950, and they took me in. I was registered as being developmentally delayed because of all the back and forth that I had to do. So I was not toilet trained properly. I remember very well that when I was 8 years old I learned to walk the stairs, so the label was developmentally delayed. And I had very much difficulties in school. I acted out a lot. I never had a proper home, because the time that I tell you about is, I was sent from pillar to post from 1945 to 1950, which are 5 years. And that's the development of a child should live in. So I'd never lived with a proper family really for long enough time to attach myself to anybody. When I came to my new foster parents, I found out slowly, I was told, that I had a father and a mother who didn't come back after the war. And I did research afterwards, and then I found, and it didn't mean anything to me, because you know, if you don't grow up with parents, that's it. I had also a sister, because I had an older sister. She was actually hidden, and during the whole rest of the war, not far from where Westerbork, the transit camp, was. They brought her once to my wartime parents to meet me with my cousin, but I don't remember that at all. I have a photo of that, but I don't remember that. So from there, so I came to my, as I came to my new foster parents, they tried to educate me, which was very difficult, and I had psychiatric treatment from age 8 till age 13, and then again 15 to 17, which I'm very thankful for, because they were very far thinking in the future, and other boys and girls my age who went through trauma didn't get that. And I was very fortunate that I got that, but and it helped. Then I started to do all the research. There were whole books and photos about the Holocaust. I started to learn about my parents, and as I grow older, I showed a lot more interest in where did I come from. And I was never a citizen of the Netherlands. I was a refugee, because my parents, when they fled Germany, they lost their German nationality and weren't also in Holland, didn't receive the Dutch nationality. So consequently, my foster parents had to register me with the foreign police because I was a refugee in the country I was born in. And after the war, many countries, when the Jews returned broken people, were not happy to see them back. I had a lot of anti-Semitism in my school. Every 6 months, the family had to go and register me with the foreign police because I was a refugee in the country I was born in. And Holland wasn't too particular about its Jews, never apologized in those years, and quite anti-Semitic. At best, you felt a little bit strange. Finally, because they adopted me at 17, was I able to get a nationality, which was a Dutch nationality. And I was Dutch for a year and a half, because then I moved to Israel, went to the army, and there was at that time no reciprocal agreement between Holland and Israel, so I lost my Dutch citizenship. But I didn't mind that because as a Jew with the law of return, I came to Israel, so there was no problem with Dutch, although they have a good reputation, windmills, tulips, and all these beautiful things. They were one of the countries, the largest collaboration with the Nazi regime. About 13 to 14% maybe were really heroes that we should appreciate. The rest were good people who didn't do anything or collaborators with the regime. And that doesn't mean they judge the good people who did nothing, also simply because they were afraid as well for their own skin. But, you know, that's in the conscience of everybody what they think, what they should be doing. I was drafted in the army. I became a paratrooper in the Israeli army. Then I did 10 years of Miluim, of reserve. I was a professional. After I went, and I found out I wasn't delayed because I did a bachelor's and a master's degree. I became a social worker, and I worked, and I became a mental health officer in the Golan Heights after I was married already with children. We as very young children were never talked about because, you know, you had to be in a concentration camp and know how to tell the stories of the concentration camps. But then later, when we became the older people, they started to find out what happened to those children whose parents didn't come back and went through the orphanage and through the foster home system after the war, and who had to search for themselves who they were. Because many children in Holland after the war even stayed with their wartime parents who hid them. And some of them even became Christian, didn't stay Jewish. Some of them stayed Jewish. So actually, I didn't know that I was Jewish until I came to the permanent Jewish foster home, and I lived with them for 10 years, because my first contact with religion was church. I went to church as a very little boy, with my wartime parents, the righteous among the nations. So it's very important that we understand that the young children have also a lot to deal with, because we all need validation of who we are, and we have to search for that. So that brought me to Theresienstadt, to the Czech Republic. It brought me to Sobibor. My parents, on the 2nd of July 1943, they were murdered in Sobibor. For me, it's very important, not having had my parents and my family, it's very important that I can at least read about them and have them. I mentioned that my father had one brother, the oldest one, who had mental health issues. And he was taken out of an institution in 1941 because they did it to their own German people as well. They wanted a proper Aryan race and no people with disabilities. So he was murdered first in 1941 because he was in an institution and had a disability. So, and not to forget the 500,000 Roma and Sinti who were murdered as well, homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, but the largest number were the Jews. I'm a Holocaust survivor, just realizing it really when I was around in my early 50s, because I never considered myself, because I had no memory. But then other people spoke to me and said to me, you've been in 3 concentration camps, your parents were murdered, you're certainly a Holocaust survivor, even if you was very young and consciously you didn't really know about it. All new life opened up for me that I indeed could identify who I was and where I came from and be proud where I came from. And I learned, I went to trace my family in Germany. I went to Sobibor where my parents were murdered. I went to Bergen-Belsen where I was. I went to Theresienstadt where I was. It's a lifetime journey. And then I was asked by people, please come and talk because it's very interesting and we need to know what happened to those children who grew up with their parents because they were murdered. Anti-Semitism was a covert anti-Semitism in the sense that I was called rag Jew because Jews dealt in textiles and business, and so you were a rag Jew. Of course, in those days, over 70 years ago, it was a very favorite saying for those who didn't like Jews: "You're a Christ killer. You killed Christ." And I always used to say, "I'm very sorry I wasn't there when it happened." And which is a ridiculous answer, but I mean, those people were there. I was told often by more adult people who thought they said the right thing, you can't help it that you were born Jewish. So in other words, there was a lot of, people were embarrassed in a way, after the war, embarrassed, and tried to hide it. Like in Germany, for the longest time, there was only a paragraph in the history books about the Holocaust. Because after the war, it was painful for people to ask, and Daddy, what did you do during the war? And Grandpa, what did you do during the war? And that is now turned around in German people. They have come 360 degrees. They have put everything out in the open for people to know. And so anti-Semitism after the war was there. I had often Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah. I was a Zionist. My foster parents were liberal, but very Zionistic, living in Europe. So I wasn't really religious, but Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, I was always off. When I finished elementary school, I went under the name of my foster parents, but I had my real name, and it was questioned. People questioned it. Why has he got another name in brackets next to his name? And people and other people were just quiet, but you could see that they saw me, us as Jews, as different people. That changed over the years, and then it came back again. So because so many people were wrong during the war, and they thought if we don't talk about it, it will go away. Well, it didn't go away. It always was there. But personally, yeah, at least until in my teenage years, there were instances, oh, you dirty Jew. You know, that's as instead of saying you idiot, it was the dirty Jew, and that's it. So you could be anything else from any descent, but if you were a Jew, you were a dirty Jew. That's it. Although Canada, as America has, the history with the Jewish community, as you all know the expression, none is too many, at the time from the government of Mackenzie King and the St. Louis that came to Canadian shores and wasn't allowed in. So I'm thinking, and I say to my fellow Canadians, even years ago when things were on the surface very well and fine, do not be complacent. Be comfortable and happy and proud of who you are as a Jew, but don't think things cannot happen again in places where you didn't think it could ever happen. So when we look today, what's happening today, it's the writing is, I don't say the writing is on the wall in the same way, but it's become household to hate Israel, which is synonymous to Jews. Even if people say, no, there's a difference. Israel is here and the Jews, no, it's no different. Because if you give a false narrative, it sets the fire for more anti-Semitism. And then if you start to believe in that false narrative, then that's what it is, and so you know yourself. So I feel quite uncomfortable. I am not super observant, but I usually used to wear a kippah in the street. Certain places I go to now, which is really sad. If I had a hijab, I could wear it, but now that I wear a kippah, I can't wear it. Certain places, it's not good for me to wear my kippah. As a survivor, I was always aware that anti-Semitism was like a cancer that goes in remission and then it comes back full blast. And so I always expected it. It's not something, I didn't think in my lifetime I had to see this. It just was a matter of time. Now, today it's in fashion. Israel, this country that behaves like Nazis and apartheid and all the slogans that they give. That is the new anti-Semitism. But the lily-white Canadians, many of them, buy all that information. So even if, let's say, we would be good, bad, or indifferent, the attitude vis-a-vis the Jew would not change. So it's religion. It's the Jews as a religion. Israel happens to become, in this time in history, a byproduct of it, and that people like to latch on. It's the time of blatant anti-Semitism again, through the state of Israel. They need to have dialogue with people. They need to learn and not blindly accept. And they need to be impartial, to really be honest with their own feelings of who they are as people, and then only talk when they have researched everything to the maximum that they can, ask questions from all sides, and then maybe form an opinion. The trouble is that people blindly accept. To hate a Jew is so easy. It's so easy to hate a Jew because you don't even have to do research for it. That's a given. Now, I still believe there are more good people than bad people. And there are many, many good Christian societies and others, and Muslim even, that do not think that way. So I don't paint everything very, very dark. But people need to be informed. People are misinformed, and the youth of today needs to learn and not get involved with something without researching it, without finding out about it. Yes, see the other side, fine, but find out how the Jew works, how Israel works, really the truth of the humanitarian side of Israel. And if your hatred is so deep that you don't want to, you know it, but you don't want to accept it, it's very hard to deal with it. So we need to learn from each other, and it's too much ignorance. And as I told you, the youth gets the false narrative, and they need to be educated. Education. Not that it may change their mind, but at least they will learn something. I am willing to educate. But if we start to defend ourselves and justify ourselves, why would I do that? I will tell the truth. I will tell the truth as I know it. Never again. Well, it's become a slogan for us. We will never let this happen again. Things are very different today from what happened during the Holocaust. We have a state. We have a Jewish homeland, which makes all the difference. And that's why never again means we don't let it come to a stage that we will be persecuted and murdered again. As a people, we need to organize. We organize as communities to protect who we are. And that's why we need to educate the police. We need to educate teachers. But unfortunately, in the school system, many teachers believe that Israel is barbaric and leads the Palestinian people to starvation. So many people are so well fed with the false information that it becomes part of them. They start to believe it. And it's very hard to get out of the system. So I think we have to be organized as a people. That you have to be proud of who you are. You have to stand up for who you are as a Jew. Don't be beaten down. Don't expect people to be sorry for you. And don't expect that things are going to get better if you don't do something about it yourself. For me, talking about it, as I said, is very important, because even if I catch only one person, it's more than I caught before, who I inform, who changes his mind. So it's not a number. And the example I give is that I spoke to a group of government workers in Ottawa, and one of them called Simon Wiesenthal Center and said, on Zoom, and when I spoke to them, he said, I come from a virulent anti-Semitic family. And I'm happy that I listened, because my opinions are changing. I will try and work on my family. That was the biggest present I could ever have. So we have to be true to ourselves, tell the truth, and go always with our head held high. I want to be proud of me, that I have a lead a Jewish life. Maybe not that I left Israel and came to Canada, but proud of me that I'm a Jew, that I talk about them all the time when I speak to people, that I visited their makeshift grave in Sobibor, and that their daughter is also an identifying Jew who had a very difficult life after the war as well. Well, not forgiveness, no, not from me, but the generations learn from the mistakes of your elders and trying not to repeat those mistakes, because you're not responsible what your father did or your grandfather did. You are another individual. You don't forgive, but you live with it, and you hope that the society where it comes from will improve and won't do the same thing, won't make the same mistakes again. Unfortunately, now with this day and age, the same mistakes are being made again in a different way. But no, I don't see any reason to forgive the Nazi regime, no. Do I forgive certain people who had to do things to save their own children? I could, but not a regime that went out to murder you. No, I could not ever forgive them. No. I just would like to say is that don't take a free life, a democracy for granted. You have to work at it. And people can say what they want, and anti-Semitism is so rampant here in Canada in certain places, and really the government isn't doing very much about it. So don't ever take for granted your freedom, but you have to fight for that and never hide your identity, because you can be proud of who you are. I think it's my duty. It's my duty to keep it alive, because we tend to become complacent and forget, and we shouldn't forget. We should be happy when we can live freely, although today in Canada, it's not the Canada I came to, it's a different Canada. And that we should never feel too comfortable.